skills, talents, capabilities are all relatively equal. And the thing that separates them is the mentality, the mindset. And that I'm overly obsessed with. And so I spend a lot of time understanding how can an athlete win more.
Well, Cody, man, I've been looking forward to this conversation. First off, welcome to the FitFo podcast. Dude, I've been pouring into your book. I got done with it and it was awesome, especially as a practitioner in the space, very much needed. A lot of validation for me is like ways that I think and believe also with, what we're building in our, startup, our platform. But before we get into that and kind of kick off the book, obviously there's a new name I just learned about, so I want to hear that as well. But who's Cody Alimondi? And what's your current focus? What are you up to? How did you get here? Give the listeners a little bit of background.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited too. I mean, from the first time we connected, I think we have similar souls and like-minded individuals. So it's always fun to talk and to do it in this manner. I'm very humbled and I'm honored to be on here. So thank you. In the simplest manner, from the way I view myself as a father, husband, and then I'd say an author, and then, I think a thinking partner would be like the best way I look at myself in a professional lens. From the standpoint of a thinking partner, specifically mental coach for athletes, founders, and owners. And that niche specifically, I played college soccer and I love athletes of all kinds. That's it's easiest for me to study. So whether it's documentaries, I'll watch, I just watched a deep free diving and how long you hold your breath, go down underwater. And I watched this crazy documentary on the way to Italy. And I mean, it blew my mind. So I'll do that pretty consistently. And that's just easy for me. And so I just have this love and admiration for athletes of all kinds. Then when you get to a certain level, you realize that skills, talents, capabilities are all relatively equal. And the thing that separates them is the mentality, the mindset. And that I'm overly obsessed with. And so I spend a lot of time understanding how can an athlete win more. And it's usually not from strength, conditioning, mobility. It's usually from the mentality standpoint. And then almost giving them permission to think in a certain way and challenge the default. I think our work, whether it's an athlete, and the same thing with a founder or owner, and I feel like founder and owners have skin in the game the same way an athlete has skin in the game. It's if you don't perform, it's a reflection. If you're a founder or owner and that your business doesn't perform, it's a reflection of you. And I don't mean this in any other disrespectful way, but there's a short window of opportunity. The athlete's not going to be in a physical capability forever. The founder or owner has the same short window of time before people, trust them. They run out of money. They run out of motivation to do it. And so I like interacting with that niche because I have skin in the game too, right? We got to figure this out quick. And often it's a barrier that we discover. And everyone's barrier is unique, and how we conquer that barrier is unique. And I love the idea of using mythology and stories to break that, the idea we're slaying a dragon or conquering Medusa, because that's really, to me, metaphorically what we are doing, right? Regardless of what that, that barrier is. And so I'm a thinking partner for them in the way, I don't tell them what to do. A lot of times I ask them questions that maybe they're avoiding or other people don't want to ask them. And it's I'm going to ask you the question that maybe is silly, maybe it's stupid, maybe it's foolish, maybe it's uncomfortable, but it breaks open the thing that maybe we're avoiding. And so that's one aspect. And then the other aspect of it is special projects. When an organization or a company is trying to do something that's a little bit unique or different, whether that's reorganize their structure, whether it's develop new hiring practices, develop a new role, review certain things. So it's something that's a little bit out of the ordinary where they want a fresh perspective and someone that's going to ask, I think, unique questions. I think one of my general principles or philosophies, general solutions generally don't work. So I'm very much bespoke in everything that I do because that's just the way I believe some of the things that we're working on need to be approached. Not like, if my only toolkit's a hammer, I'm going to see everything as a nail, right? That kind of idea. That my work is, I think, very personal to me because I feel I'm so connected with the people either I'm coaching or the special projects I'm working on. Like one I did was like a dream project. I worked on a country club, and they've been around for like 100+ years, and they needed like to do a reorganization, but they had this amazing pro that's been there for like 25 years. And he was ready for like a bigger opportunity. And not that he was going to leave the club, because he loved the club, but I mean, he was a great leader, well-respected, loved. So what we did is we created a brand new role, brought him up, backfilled his role with another great pro, and then brought in tennis under him. So he's like the director of, say, like golf and athletics. So they have the tennis program under him, the golf program, and then the greens, like, the greens committee or superintendent. And so now all three of those report to him versus those reporting to the board, because the board was so involved. They're like, dude, we cannot be this involved. And so reorganizing that, I created basically a dream job for him. He's so happy. He's so appreciative. And the club is flourishing because he's gotten that opportunity to, where before maybe there were some barriers. He had to go through the board, go through this member. He has far more autonomy, far more authority and power to make moves and do things. And it's amazing. Like, that's so fun to create a role for somebody that deserves it. And so that was not obvious when we started, but after having the conversation, it's like, this is a no-brainer. Like, you have an absolute stud on your hands who's been here for 25 years. How do we retain its legacy, but move the club forward? And so that's like one of the ones I just worked on recently. And just to give you kind of an idea of what I mean by special projects.
Yeah, man, that's so cool. It's interesting to see too. And for backstory for the listeners is, Cody and I got started at the same company. Man, how many years ago was that now? 14 or so, 15 for me, probably. Yeah, and staffing and recruiting is a game that I've always been in, and obviously trying to modernize that journey now. But it's cool to see the journey that you've been on from there, because what you just described, that sounds like such a fun project. And, I think about the club here locally, like that would be a dream exercise that I think would be great for the club to go through and see what could they change and what could they improve and how can we get the more of the membership involved. And that's just like one microcosm example. But how do you get into finding that type of role? Because where you and I come from, like we're not chasing down those kind of recs too often. And, that's a big transition over the years. So I like how you become a coach, you're able to partner with these different organizations, but how are you finding these different types of clienteles, from athletes to founders to country clubs?
Very hard right now because I didn't take social media serious. So a lot of it is like cold reach out, word of mouth, or referrals. Just not the funnest way to do it, to be honest. But as I, turn this page where I kind of look at it as awareness, like, I just want to work with interesting people on interesting things. Like, I have no desire to like chase retirement. I have no desire to like make a bunch of passive income. Not that I think there's anything wrong with that, but like I like what I do. I find it very interesting and curious, and I'm curious about it. And it provides me a lot of fulfillment and meaning. I'm pretty convinced from like my research in the last decade that like we need purpose in our life in some fashion, like very, and so even if you gave me all the money in the world, I'd probably do something similar, right? I'd just probably do it at like a crazy level. Like I'd have like a Rob Dyrdek like factory, right? Have like people come in, and like I just do it at a bigger level. But moving forward, hopefully the goal is, I'll create, Kevin Kelly, the guy, you know who he is? He created Wired magazine. He's done a bunch of other cool things. He's got an awesome book called Excellent Advice for Living. And he has this idea of like 1,000 true fans. It's like, if you have 1,000 true fans, like, and I think that's maybe the barrier I needed to get over with social media. It's like, dude, I'm not trying to like curate a following or having to like put the stress of posting every day and it, and what am I going to say? And you almost create too much. And recently I was talking with somebody who's helped me build my new brand that should be launching, because 3 Embers is my first company, and that was like just a medium to like start to do work. But now over the last 5 or 6 years, I know what work I want to do. I know what work I don't want to do. And just as you did with your own firm, like you got to kind of figure it out. And so my new brand, will be coming out, will be called Jester. And it's all about, challenging the default and being uncomfortable. And the idea is like the Shakespearean fool who was always with the king that asked the king the question that no one else could ask the king because it was the jester. So he has like license of decorum, and it's what he's supposed to do. And so if an individual or a company hires me, they know what they're hiring. Like they're hiring someone to challenge them, and that's what they want, right? And so now I have permission, and the company's giving me permission, or the individual, and now we do it at a standpoint of not me to hurt your feelings. I mean, the jester's supposed to do it in like a thoughtful, witty, comedic way. And so hopefully I can transition that into the social media where I'll start to attract people who are looking for that. Maybe the athlete, the founder, the owner that's like, man, I just need someone to kind of tell me the truth or tell me what I'm missing. What am I seeing? I need someone to be honest with me, but not do it in a way that's going to destroy my self-confidence or my ego, right? There's got to be a thoughtful approach to it. And I think from being a college athlete and not really, I think, achieving the level of success that I could have because of my mentality barrier makes me really empathetic to that athlete. It's like I want them to do it. And same thing with the business, the owner, the founder, understanding sometimes you're so close in the woods to see it. Like one of my clients right now, he's got 3 restaurants, and they made a frozen pizza company during the pandemic just to like survive. Ended up going getting way bigger than they expected. And they're at a point now where they have some serious partnerships lined up so they could go across the country. And they're going to like 20x in size. And it's going to be the biggest revenue generator for them, which they didn't plan on doing this. And so now he's in some of these situations and conversations that he's not used to being in. And part of my job is just to provide him like the confidence to tell him that like you've earned your spot here. He's around, I think, these really, really wealthy individuals, and sometimes you can feel like an imposter, but he's incredible. And my job isn't to boost his ego as much as to like help him curate the proper self-image. And same thing with athletes, right? Like I know you're a golfer too. It's like if you get up, to a golf ball and you think, oh, I hope I don't shank it. It's like, you just increase your odds of shanking it like tenfold. But if you get up, and you have the self-image that like, I'm not worried about hitting in the hole. I'm just worried about doing my proper process and then swinging. It's so self-image, I think, is really important. And that's what I try to help them cultivate. Because it's not my job to build their self-image. It's my job to help them build a self-image that they want and then give them permission to be it.
Man, I've got a couple different thoughts off that. First of all, my friends are laughing that you called me a golfer. Thank you. Well, I love golf. I'm terrible at it. But, you mentioned purpose. Was there a moment in time that really got you thinking about purpose where it just like clicked? Because you talk about being a collegiate athlete and, maybe you didn't reach the goals and the outcomes that you think you probably could have. Maybe you didn't reach your full potential then. But now you're definitely, making the right progress towards, it sounds like, reaching that with your profession and, what you're doing to be an author. And, the hardest part I could assume is getting started because I don't know how many people think that they want to write a book, but, frankly, a lot of us probably won't do it. It is a personal goal of mine, but like I made no progress towards that yet. And so I'm curious to learn about like, what was that switch for people though? Like when purpose became such a motivating factor. Because growing up, it's, you want to have the accolades, you want to be on the all-star team. Then when you get in a profession, you want to make the money or you want to get the role and the title. And I know you climbed through the ranks and got into leadership and management there, but like, what switch?
I don't know if it was necessarily one thing as much as it was like a few things, like you almost start one spot. So I remember vividly, like, I think when I started to think about that, I read Man's Searching for Meaning, which is a very, popular book, but that there was like a line in that, and I'm gonna probably paraphrase or mess this up, but the gist of it's, I think, on par, where he was talking about how most people died after the holiday, in the concentration camps, And he said it was because they lost hope. So like prior to the holiday, the prisoners would have hope. They'd be like, oh, I'm going to be home for the holiday. I'm going to be with my family. I'm going to get out of here. And then the holiday would come and go, and they were still there. And then all of a sudden they lost hope. And then he goes on to say, like, the ones that survived, they had, like, their purpose was driving, like, I'm going to have a coffee with my daughter again. I'm going to hug my dog. Like, that was their purpose. Their purpose, like, I'm going to do this again. And through the horrible situations that, I mean, you can't read that book without getting, like, crying or, like, being teary-eyed. Like, I just can't believe someone...
Gives you the chills, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very hard, at least for me, it was a hard, emotional book to read, but, like, that's when I realized, like, the power of purpose. And purpose is so subjective, and it's so personal. I can't give you purpose. You can't give me purpose. I have to define it. And purpose changes, right? Like, early on when we started our careers, like, my purpose was to be successful and make some money. Like, I wanted to get off, my dad, when I graduated, gave me $100 bill, and this is the best thing he could have done. He was like, well is done, buddy. This is on you now. I'm no longer, you're on your own. And so I was like, okay. And I was, we're making $28K a year. So that was like, I think I have my first paycheck stub still. It was like,
I still have my first W-2.
You too, right? I think because we'd get them like mail. I think it was like $400 a week, maybe. Am I, something like that after? And so like that, and that motivated me. And that was my purpose. And then you hit that, and I felt good. Like, that felt good to hit like a 6-figure mark and to find success. But then the purpose changed. Like, man, I want to help other people do it and develop and mentor them. And then the purpose changed where it's like, man, now that doesn't really do it for me either. And then I think that's when, I left the staff in the recruiting world. I went back to grad school because like I was lost. But I wasn't like lost in a way of like, there's this word called Cody wobbling. I'm pretty sure it's a slang English word. And it's like wandering, but you're not lost. So it's like I was wandering, but like I knew that I was searching for something, but I didn't know what I was searching for. So I wasn't like anxious. It was a bit of boredom and a bit of like, I'm looking for something, I need to find it. And so my way was like, I was lucky enough to have some money saved up, and my wife, is an absolute, stud at what she does. And we didn't have any kids at the time. So I was like, I'm just going to go to grad school, and I went to grad school. And during that time, I got to play a lot with this idea of like, what can my purpose be in this new season of life? Being a husband, we were planning on, having kids. Now I have 2 daughters. And so it's like that kind of transition. And then I'm assuming maybe after, 5 or 10 years with Jester, maybe my purpose will shift again. But again, that's always my responsibility to acknowledge what it is and also give myself permission to change. Like, I mean, that's, and so it started, I know it started with that book, and then I think it was just a constant little stepping stones. And then it gets clear, and then maybe over time it changes. You know what I mean? And then like you can change it,
Do you think that there's anything you can do, like now as a father and thinking about kids, and I've got 2 girls as well, as we've talked about, it's like, do you ever think about how do you help them get purpose at this? And it's such an early stage, right? It feels like such a big monumental thing to think about, or is it something that has to be discovered on your own?
I don't think about that with my girls. I think about cultivating their interests. So I just try to create as many opportunities for them to find something they're interested in, and then give them more opportunities to cultivate that. Because I think passion is like a byproduct of like, first you start with like, you're curious about something, right? And then your curiosity, it's like, I'm kind of interested in this. And then you do it a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, like, you cultivate passion for it. So like, if I'm ever like advising, anyone that's a younger age that's like looking for a profession, like, how do I find my passion? I'm like, I think passion's like a byproduct of a lot of things. And so for me with the girls, like, I'm trying to start at the first, stepping stone of being like, what are you curious about? Like, what are you interested in? And then let them kind of go from there. And my oldest is very interested in like things that she can have control over. Like she likes to write, she likes to read, she likes to like play, cards. Like she's in control, right? Like she likes to play, obviously, mom and baby. She also like is interested in learning things that she's the captain of, like control. Like she wants to learn chess, she likes checkers. And then my youngest is more like, she likes to be part of like a team environment. She wants to play together. So like one is very like leader, alpha oriented, and maybe because she was the firstborn, there's probably some psychology behind that. And the other one is a little bit more group oriented. I just try to create avenues for both of them because I think there's a serendipitous aspect to life that I always am trying to create. Like, can I create serendipitous moments? So, and I think with the girls being so as young as they are, 3.5 and 5.5, how can we just like going to Italy is like the perfect example, like put them in a different environment to see what they get curious about or what they get interested about. And then from there, we can keep going. I mean, it's a great question you asked, but I guess I don't think I can cultivate passion. I think passion is a reflection of like time spent and interest in doing something and how you spend that time doing it.
Yeah, thank you for that response. It's interesting I hadn't really thought about that yet either. You also mentioned self-image. I think that might be something I try to think about more. Maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, is like how, especially having young girls, is like how do you make sure that they have the confidence of themselves and their own, self-image, and they're talking positively, about what their beliefs are and how they think about themselves and their relationships, and then ultimately as they're growing now, friendships and new levels of relationships get built in as they go to school and they're surrounded by other kids, and there's only so much innocence I think as a parent you can keep before kind of have to let them spread their wings and fly. But if I can instill that self-image of confidence, of knowing who they are, of the right values, the right morals, the right belief system, then like that will set them up to be able to hopefully see success in whatever passion it is that they have. And then maybe downstream it does help them find their purpose. Who knows? You mentioned earlier also about writing a book, and that's what led us to this conversation. I want to come into that a little bit because I just got done reading it and it was awesome. As I mentioned before, I really enjoyed, the path that you went on, the very thoughtfulness around, the aspect of recruiting, hiring, frameworks that you see be successful. You dub them Linda, but how do you even begin to write a book? As somebody that's got that on their bucket list, you self-published, I believe you said. So like, any advice for somebody that wants to have that mission be checked off their list? And then let's talk about it a little bit more.
I think part of my motivation to do it was because I enjoy reading, and I always felt like it was such like a gift that like someone spent the time to do this, and like there's so many books that are so random that I've read, but like one or two lines I feel like completely changed my mindset or like broke a barrier. And so like, and what's really funny is like I was a horrible reader like growing up. Like I was in like a slow reading class. I don't even know how I graduated college, to be like just very frank with you. Like I was a very like poor reader. So like when I started to read, I think more for like myself, it's probably around like 25 or 26. And I started with like the books that everyone tells you to read, like Good to Great, like How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like, I started there. But it took me forever to read. Like I was the slowest reader. I'm still a relatively slow reader, but now I'm very like particular on like what I read. And it's always like curated by like my interests and what I want to learn about at that moment. But I was motivated like, well, I feel that I get so much, from these books that I want to do my part, I guess, of like kind of like paying it forward and participating. Because in many ways, like authors were like kind of my heroes in a way, just like the same way, like, athletes or founders, like anyone who's doing like like anyone who's doing something that's like truly authentic and an expression of who they are, like that's heroic to me. And so like I admire those people. And so I think I was just wanting to do it for that reason. And then I guess like, going like how to do it. Well, I mean, first you just got to like to be a writer, you just have to write. Like, you know what I mean? So you could become like, just write every day, write 500 words, you're a writer. And then to be an author, you just got to publish something. So it's like, that's the way I kind of looked at it. I was like, all right, well, first let's be a writer. Yeah, like, so first step one would be like become a writer. And so I did like a challenge where it's like, I'm going to do 30 blog posts, a month of blog posts. So one blog post for 30 days straight. And then I gave myself like creative constraints of like 1,200 words. So I got to write 1,200 words. I said 1,200 shitty words. So I didn't give myself like too much, pressure that it had to be good. And I had to publish it. And they're like, post it online. And the reason why I want to do that is so like there's a little bit of like accountability to actually like have it out there in the world. Because if you're going to publish something in the future, like as an author, like it is kind of uncomfortable. And so, start to cultivate that muscle. And so then it's like 1,200 words every day for 30 days. And then you're like, okay, like I can kind of do this. And then when I was writing a book, I did that exact same thing. I was like, I'm just going to do 1,200 words every day, but now I have something I'm trying to say, like the book. And so I just took that same mentality until then the book is written. And some days, like 1,200 words takes forever. Other days, you write.
First question is like, how long does it take to write 1,200 words?
Yeah.
Like that.
I mean, it really, it depends on the day. And so what I would do is I give myself 90 minutes. And I'd say, like, in this 90 minutes, I can either write or do nothing. So I can just sit there, right? But I can't, like, scroll on my phone. I can't go on YouTube. I can't, you know what I mean? So it's either a blank piece of paper or I'm writing. And then, like, after, like, 10 or 15 minutes, you're kind of like, something happens. So I just, like, I guess I sit in the boredom for a while. Very and I just important. Have that block. I like to read and write with music on. So you kind of create, like, the right environment for yourself. And this is, like, ridiculous. And, like, I don't know if you like him, but, like, The Weeknd's first album, the trilogy, like for some reason that sound is really good for me. And so like every time I'm doing like deep writing, I have that on in the background. And there's something that like all of a sudden like changes. Like I feel like my mindset happens. And then if I'm editing, I usually just have like white noise on. But if it's silent, I don't know. I honestly like it's too spooky for me for some. It's weird. I don't know. Like I can't do it if it's silent. And so you just create these kind of like fun little, like you said before, like rituals. And then I just like looked at like what do other authors do? It's like I looked at like what Tarantino was doing because I thought it was like interesting how his his movies were pretty like unquestionably Tarantino. Anne Lamott wrote a book called Bird by Bird, which was like a really like helpful approach to writing. Tim Ferriss has a lot of really good stuff on writing, and so I just kind of took little tips and advice from them and then made it my own. And I always carry around a notebook, always have a pen and paper with me, always. Like I'm prepared, I think, for a good idea to strike me. Because I don't really think a good idea is going to strike me like when I'm ready for it. I think it's going to strike me like when it wants to come to me, kind of in a way, like kind of the idea like the Greek muses. And so I think that would be another thing too. Like if you want to write, always have a pen and paper with you, always. Like I don't go like anywhere without one. It doesn't matter if I'm golfing, if I'm, in the house. Like I have dry erase markers, so I'll write on my mirrors if I need to, because how often is a good idea come in the shower? It's like religiously, so right? So I'll jump out of the shower and write it on the mirror. And so once you do that, I feel like the habit then, it begins to cultivate. And then in the process, then after you write, you got to find an editor. Editors are worth their weight in gold. So you can find a good one, unless you have a publisher. I mean, I tried to go the publishing route, but I wanted more autonomy of picking the editor. And given our professional backgrounds, I was like, I'm pretty sure I can hire a pretty good editor. And there's a lot of amazing ones out there. So I found one in England. She was wonderful. And I worked with her on both books. I really liked her style. And that's kind of like, what led to me creating Linda was like, dude, everybody needs to hire somebody at some point, whether it's like a babysitter, whether it's a plumber, it's an accountant, it's an advisor. It's like everyone should have the skill set of hiring. And I realized that like my ability to hire people has really enabled me to either get closer to the things I want to get done, or I've hired the wrong people, even from us as professionals, because hiring's hard, and it has derailed me 6, 7, 8 months, And so it's like the cost of hiring the wrong person is horrible. You know what I mean? And then the value of hiring the right person, it's like your dreams come true, right? Like the way she brought my voice out And then the same thing with an illustrator, like to design the book cover. I hired a guy to do that for me with like Path Pavers, my first book, and then Dealer's Choice, my second one. And then in the second one, we created more visuals for inside the book, which, I'm going to send you a copy, because you got like,
Please do.
the bootstrap, like blueprint version. And so that's it. So step one, first become a writer. You got to become a writer before an author. Give yourself some sort of creative constraints, 1,200, it could be 1,000 words, it could be 500 words. It doesn't matter. Do that. And then carry around a pen and paper all the time so you can get lucky for ideas. And then from there, it'll happen. And the one thing I can promise is that it's just a fun way to explore an idea really thoughtfully, like regardless of what you want to write about, right? Like to explain the first book, Path Pavers, was like, how can more, I remember I read the statistic, like I forgot what percentage of people are satisfied or engaged with their work, but it's like crazy low. And I was like, why? Like, why do so many people not enjoy what they do? And so that was the question that started like Path Pavers, like the pursuit of interesting work. And what I, came to learn from that, it's like, well, to have interesting work, you really need three things, right? You need a certain level of autonomy to express yourself in your work. So that's number one thing. Like, the work is a medium of expression. It's like, what if you look at work like that? It's like your podcast is a medium of expression of who you are. The way you guys help companies find talent is a medium of your point of view. Same thing with like an artist, whether they're making music or a painting or an application, it's their point of view expressed. That's beautiful. So you need a certain level of autonomy. Now, if you're cultivating a skill, well, that autonomy is going to be smaller because you need to learn, right? But then over time, the greatest, professions, you have a ton of autonomy, right? You just have the creative constraints. Like a basketball player like Steph Curry can take a shot from wherever he wants, right? He has full autonomy. But growing up, he had to develop the skill, and then over time it got better, right? But his creative constraints now are just the basketball court. The lines on the court are his creative constraints, and he can be as creative and as expressive as he wants to be, which is why we love to watch Steph Curry, because no one plays basketball like Steph Curry. Like, it's his point of view, his medium to express himself. And he plays in this beautiful, like, joyful manner, like almost like a child. Almost like, the way, like, I don't know if you know soccer players, but like Ronaldinho for Brazil. He played in a similar way for soccer. It was playful. He was dancing. It was so cool to watch. And the second thing you need is you want to be a self-directed team. Like, no one wants to be micromanaged. No one wants to be, and so if you're working on a team, you want the team to be self-directed. Like, we're all directing towards something that we all deem is valuable to go towards. And we agree on how we define success and what the outcome is going to be. And then finally, the incentive. Like, you can't buy people, right? That's not the best way to do it. And so the incentives need to be beyond financial measures. So the incentives need to pull on either morality or your beliefs or your principles or validation for your self-image or whatever the case may be. Like, our incentives, like, we're fathers. Like, that's part of our work. If we define work as a transfer of energy towards something, which I got from anthropologist James Sussman, he wrote an incredible book called Work. And he defined work as a transfer of energy towards something.
I like
that. Like a flower works to twist towards the sun because it's alive. And so as fathers, we transfer energy towards, our kids. And, and often the incentive for us isn't financial, right? But the incentive is to have a good relationship with our daughters because we want to have that forever, right? Like, I don't want to be absent now and then they get older, like, well, we don't have, like, there's nothing there, right? So it's like we're in this balancing act of sacrificing time maybe in our personal pursuits and then time with them. But at the end of the day, our incentive is this is a short moment in time that they're going to be this age. I want to develop really good relationships and really good roots with them because if we do it properly, man, the relationship with your kids, hopefully, you live a long life. That's the best incentive ever, is to have a long, loving relationship with your kids. Like, that's enough said. And that's the way I think about it when, we're putting them to bed at night or we're foregoing, a work call or an opportunity so we can sit down and have a family dinner together. And so I think, part of, developing a profession is like looking for those things. Get the autonomy necessary, be on a self-directed team, and then make sure the incentives align with your principles. And that, boom, I mean, satisfaction and engagement 100% will increase. And what's crazy, like this is like well studied, scientifically well studied. Like this is not new. So when I read this, I still don't really have an answer for you why, but part of me thinks that it stems with hiring. And that's kind of why I spent time thinking about that. Like, well, what if we get it right on the forefront? You know, we hire better, give them more autonomy, give them the proper incentives outside of just financial, and then have them be self-directed. I don't even think managers like managing people. Like, I don't think people like being managed, and I don't think people like managing. Like, so that's something I think we 100% can, I don't want to say eliminate it, because you need some level of accountability. I think accountability is important, but maybe change it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why I like management is because there's some sort of level of joy that you get by motivating somebody to go accomplish their dreams, and like having the ability to hold them, you know, whether it's accountable or just, you know, help them see something in themselves that they might not see, and then, you know, help them achieve that goal. Like, not just, don't tell them exactly step by step how, but you show them what they can do. Then they make it their own with their level of autonomy to go accomplish that goal however they want to go track it down. That's what I love at least about management. But
so how do you define management then? That might be interesting.
We have an ism that I say often, but it's like motivate, don't manage. So as a manager, as a leader, I think of it more of like a leader than a manager, truthfully. But yeah, it's not to manage somebody to go do some task or fulfill some role. It's motivate them to go accomplish, you know, whatever the said responsibility is that they agreed to, that they want to help us accomplish, both for themselves, for their career goals, but also for the organization and our customers and our clients. I mean, to me, it's always, we start and really work backwards with the customer impact in mind. And so, you know, we have a big saying about remember why. Like, remember why you started. Why are you doing this task? What is this phone call potentially going to lead to? Not just for you, but for the candidate on the other side of the phone, for the client that's desperate for the right type of individual to come help their organization grow. And for us, because, you know, what could that opportunity lead to? You know, maybe this is the first position we're ever going to get to work on for, you know, said XYZ organization, and we have to come through. And if we do, then, you know, this could lead to, you know, multi-million dollars worth of opportunity for us and unlock another 100 position opportunities for the people that we know that we care about in our network, the candidates, the consultants that we work with, to try to help them achieve their goals. So yeah, long-winded answer to what is management for me, but that's really, you know, how I think about it. And I've been studying Bill Walsh a little bit lately as, you know, we're coming into the 49ers, you know, season. You mentioned sports. I'm a big sports fan as well, but, you know, reading his book was, it was just really interesting to see like the level of detail that he went into as the coach, as the GM, as the manager. You know, he could tell every single person from the way that somebody answers the phone, you know, the 49er way. And I don't feel like I did that very well. It's like, you know, you hire awesome people and you expect them to be able to just go figure it out, right? But there is something about thinking through every single decision that matters. That's what you did with this book, with hiring. I mean, there's things that I've already implemented because I've read this book. I'm interviewing a person this afternoon, and I'm like, am I clearly defining the levels of autonomy? What does that even mean for this individual? I haven't even asked that yet, right? What are those self-directed tasks that they like to do versus being managed by somebody? You know, as a manager, if you can't tell somebody what to do because you haven't done it, I think the worst managers I've ever had, it was that. And I've been that manager before too. You know, if I didn't do it, if I couldn't tell you how to do your job at a high level, then, you know, who am I to tell you how to do your job at all? And so that's how I've been thinking about it recently, at least, especially as like trying to found a company and create a culture. And you talked about financial or intelligent incentives. It's something very top of mind, you know, right now. I'm actually curious because there are so many studies out there that talk about, you know, people that don't have interest in their job and what is it that creates that loyalty. You know, we're trying to think about, you know, how do we get somebody that eats, breathes, sleeps stealth because they know the impact this is going to have for them and it's going to help them realize their dreams and accomplish their life goals. But, you know, I can't ever expect them to love it the way I do. That would be very ignorant of me. But how do I put it in a way that's going to help them accomplish what they care most about? And you mentioned incentives, but I'm a big biohacker. I found out some things in my personal health that I was very surprised by as somebody that I think's in good shape, and I exercise, almost daily, and I, pretty conscious about what I eat, like 80-20 rule. But sometimes genes matter. And, through that discovery, through, different levels of blood tests and understanding, how my, genetic SNPs are and what does that lead to? I've got ApoE4, which, I didn't really know about until I read Outlive. And it's like, okay, I've got a certain percentage of higher risk of a heart attack and Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's like, oh, I've got 2 SNPs of that. So now it's 90% higher than the normal American. So I need to go think about looking at that now at 35. And so when I come back to intelligent incentives, to me, if my employer was to give me the DEXA scan or one of these really in-depth blood work tests that I can, the Gallery test, which tells you, if you have cancer at a very early stage, those are the incentives that I'm trying to tie into our organization, because I think about health span and lifespan, because if we accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish as a company, and we do have the financial outcomes that we hope to be able to create for people, both internal employees and external, then people are going to live long. They're going to have means to live the lives that they want to. And so I want them to do it for a long time with the people that they love, their kids, their grandkids. And so, maybe it's an Aura ring to help them pay attention to their sleep more than it is a $500 Amazon gift card, making a conscious decision that I, as a leader of this company, am investing in your health because I think it's going to help you maximize your potential and your goals and getting those scans or whatever it is. So, but I'm very curious to hear your perspective after you've studied it more than I have. What incentives work that aren't monetary?
I think everything you're thinking about is awesome. I want to work for you. That sounds great. I think number one is just care. You care, right? I mean, that's it sounds simple, but if you care and you make the wrong decision, we can all get past that. Cause it wasn't it wasn't on purpose, it was an innocent mistake. But when I think about culture, I'm very particular about rhetoric. So the words you use, I think, are very important. There's a school out here that their values, their words are so thoughtful and so curated. I'll have to send them to you because I don't want to butcher them right now. But my kids, they go to a summer camp there. And you read them, and they're and they're 3 words per value, I believe. And it's I'm trying to think of one of them right now, but I don't want to butcher it, but I'll send them to you. But the rhetoric, and it matches their culture and the teachers there and their philosophy. And so the incentives have to be aligned with the culture. I'm going to try to say this in the most thoughtful way possible. But if I work at a gym, and I have physical trainers that aren't fit, that seems really contradictory to me. That I would go pay for a physical trainer that I'm more fit than. So part of my culture, their incentives would be okay, I'm not going to not hire you, but you have a year to transform and get fit, right? And so that would be my incentive. And then when you do that, which you believe in you're going to get a bonus and you're going to get a promotion or something, so that nature, because you've been through it, and the experience you have now, you can talk to it. We can, that's a good incentive. So I'm hiring you. One, I'm going to give you a job. A part of your job, not only am I going to pay you, is going to say that you need to get healthier and fit, because part of your profession is to look the way that you're wanting other people to look, right? And it doesn't mean you have to have a 6-pack, but I've just gone to gyms before where I see people that are physically overweight, and it's why would I pay you to train me? That seems weird, it'd be cool if the company incentivized them. And then what if I went there after a year and I'm dude, you lost 30 pounds. I definitely want to work with you, right? That would inspire me as a member, at that gym. So that would be an example. But for you, I don't know, but it has to be aligned with your culture. So if health is one of them, I think what you said would be cool, whether it was an Aura ring or a Fitbit subscription, some of those things that maybe people want, but they can't afford it from the subscription standpoint, or they can't do this, or the DEXA scans, or a gym membership, or maybe, having people part of your job is to do something physical for 3 or 4 days on our dime, right? During the workday, you know what I mean? You have to do it. And, part of our weekly reports, you're going to respond, there's going to be a section of what you physically did, this week, and I'm going to hold you accountable to it. if that's important to you. Or like, I'm a big fan of meetings, walking meetings. It's like if you work in a place with each other, it's like we're going to do 50% of our meetings are going to be walking meetings. They're going to be outside, or they're going to, something of that nature. But yeah, it just has to be aligned with your culture. Like, I don't know enough about the culture you want to build to give you direct answers. I'm just kind of piggybacking off of what you said, but it just has to be aligned. Like for me, like if I were to hire people, like part of my incentive, would be if you get a review from somebody that makes you feel like you changed their life in a positive way. Like I'll never forget like the first really good review. I want you to bring it to me and we're going to go out. I'm going to give you X amount of money to take you and your significant, other out. Because I don't know, why would you want to go out with me? You probably want to go out with your friends or significant other, but I want to reward you for getting that. I remember like I got a review with a lady. She was like, "You're the only person that believed in me. You gave me a chance when no one else did. And it changed my life. And now I have the job of my dreams." And that's when I was like, oh, wow, like we can make a positive impact on people. So something of that nature where it's like you're not chasing reviews, you're chasing good quality work where you make a positive impact where somebody would want to do that for you. Something of that nature, because like you said, I mean, I think we can do some really cool things, but we have to incentivize the right way. Like doctors and lawyers are incentivized in a weird way. I don't have a solution for it, but it doesn't really make sense that a doctor would be incentivized to push a certain prescription medicine because they get a kickback. That seems like you're putting the doctor in an unfair situation. Like he's got to provide for his family. Like I'm not going to judge the doctor. I'm going to judge the system. That seems like a stupid incentive system. Or a lawyer, like a lawyer getting paid just on hours billed. So now you're not incentivizing a lawyer to do good quality work quickly. You're incentivizing them either to lie that they worked longer or to do more busy work so you have higher billable hours. This seems wrong, And so there's always questioning, like, does the incentive challenging a moral belief, I guess, versus like a financial incentive? Because like if you have a moral incentive and a financial incentive that compete against each other, man, I mean, the financial one probably going to win a lot, especially if you don't have a ton of money, right? Which unfortunately, a lot of us are in that situation. Like we need the money for our families. So I would try to make sure the incentives don't compete, like a moral and a financial one don't compete against each other. And I think that's how you would create the proper ones. But they all should be subjective and reflection of your culture and the type of people you want to attract or not attract, right? Like I think that like kind of we talked about like in dealer's choice, like, you avoid the gray area at all costs.
Yeah. And like, don't be afraid to be unapologetic about what that is. Yeah, I think that's something that I've had to learn over the years is like, trying to please too many people is not the right way to operate. And how we're not going to do it here is like we believe this matters. I do want individuals that care about their health and wellness because I think it makes for a better culture and it helps people, if I can uncover something for them that helps them be able to feel better as an individual, as a husband, as a wife, as a father, then like that's amazing, for me. So I'm one of the people that think that way. Let's talk about Dealer's Choice a little bit. And I love the name, by the way. I just learned about this. But for listeners who haven't, met, it's coming out soon, but they haven't met Linda. Who's Linda? What is she? And what is the problem? You've touched on it so far, but what is she going to solve?
Yeah. So from our experience, I think that there's a difference between hiring somebody to do a job and hiring someone to fill a role. And it's like a role to me is different, right? There's like a responsibility. You're part of the culture. You're part of pushing the culture forward. You're part of cultivating it, making it better, right? Like we can think of sports, like, or you have a role in a team. You're a point guard. You're a center. You're that you have that role, and with that role comes a certain level of responsibility. And it's an expression too. So there should be more weight to it. Where a job is something that's a little bit more transactional, a little bit, less, I think there's less weight in it. There's less consequence of error. So I think when you're hiring for roles, there's a much higher level of consequence of error, ripple effect, if you make the wrong decision. And so I think traditional hiring, everything that most people, is pretty common knowledge, I think that's really good for hiring jobs. And I think jobs we can also define it as like something that's simple, standardized, and routine oriented. That's kind of like a job, right? It's a kind of plug and play sort of thing. Where a role, I think, is something that's a little bit more complex, a little more unique, a little more dynamic. It's context, involved. There's moving pieces, and especially, and I think in the modern age, there's going to be more roles that we're going to be hiring for, less jobs, because the jobs hopefully would just be outsourced to AI, and jobs most likely in many ways are kind of boring, for people. Like, we're a relatively creative species. I think, we do a lot of good work together, and some of these simplified, standardized, routine-oriented jobs can be boring. Not that they're not important, but with AI and machines, hopefully it'll free up people to spend more time doing something that's a little bit more, creative based, regardless of how that will be. And so that's what I did. So I was like, well, how can I create a role-based hiring framework versus a job-based hiring framework, which I think is what traditional work is. And so role-based hiring framework is for that, what we just talked about. And I created these acronyms because I need them to remember it. And I couldn't think of any better ones. And so here they are. So when you're designing a role, I call it Linda. And it stands for L is level of autonomy. Level of autonomy is a direct correlation with the level of professionalism someone is. So the higher level the role is, the more autonomy you should design for the role, the more that they can express themselves. So level of autonomy is very important. All different aspects, whether it's people, budget, process, strategy. And then you can always have a cap out point, right? It's like when I worked with a restaurant group, we had their general managers, we gave them level of autonomy. They could do anything, from $500 and less. And if they made a certain change for $500, like they needed to buy a new thing or change something, they had to get approval. And then as they continued to show, really good thoughts, and they were really thoughtful about it, and they were great, then we extended that to $1,000. So you can change the levels of autonomy based on the individual and the amount of evidence you collect that they're good at, you trust them. And the next thing for I is intelligent incentives, which, we kind of already talked about. N is the non-negotiables. So this is my way of reaching out to culture, right? So and non-negotiables, I think, state a lot about who you are, your beliefs, and your values. And so that's a way I think of taking a subjective thing and making it a little bit more objective. D is definition of success. So how do you define success in this role? I assume everyone's going to define success in X role differently, depending on the environment and other elements. And then A is accountability. So how are you held accountable and who holds you accountable? So this gives shape now to the role. And to me, this is more personalized, and it's more a reflection of you as a leader and you as a culture and what you guys are trying to do as an organization. It's different, right? It'll stand out. So I should be able to read a role, and I call it a role description. I should be able to read that and be like, yep, that's me. I love that. Hell no. You couldn't pay me enough money to do this, right? And that's what you want. And then on the flip side, you want to cultivate something in parallel, which I call a professional profile for the type of individual that could fill that role. And so the acronym for this is STACK. It's the stack for the individual that have the best opportunity to find success in the role and in the environment. And so STACK stands for skills, talents, ability, character, and knowledge. And so the way I relate skills and ability, I have this skill, I have the ability to swing a golf club. I have this skill to shoot a certain score, right? And so that's kind of how skills and abilities are related. I have the ability to speak. I have this skill to give a presentation, right? And so you want to know the level of skill set you need, or the bare minimum of someone to be able to do the job. I do not have the skills to play a pro-am. You know what I mean? I would shank it. I would probably kill somebody. I don't have that skill. So if you're recruiting someone to do a pro-am, I'm not the guy. And vice versa. If you're recruiting somebody to edit a podcast, I have the ability probably to open Adobe, but I definitely don't have the skills to do it. And so skills and ability give you the realm of being okay, I don't need someone with a ton of skill here, but maybe I need someone with a ton of skill in this range. But if they have the ability to do this, I can train them, right? Mm-hmm. And so that kind of gives you the flexibility and the freedom. And then talents and knowledge. Talents is things you have to cultivate. So maybe you're disproportionately good at something, but you've cultivated that. And a lot of people have dormant talents. It's talents they don't even know that they haven't had the opportunity to awaken. And so a talent you need to be conscious of it and have cultivated it. And then character Character is how you express yourself in your work. And you can leverage like, the big five personality ocean, which is a good one, to leverage, but you could define character however you want, right? I just use ocean because it's the most, I think it's just to give someone something. I like ocean way better than disc or Hogan or any of the other personality, but I also think that you could make your own like character, driven, elements to it. And then knowledge is experience and scholarly. So certain things you can only earn through experience, and other things you can learn through books and education and stuff of that nature. And having the difference is important, because the old adage, like, I need someone with 10 years experience, that's silly. Like, that doesn't, what knowledge do you need them? Could they have acquired it from a book? They acquired it in school, their scholarly pursuits. Could they acquire it through experience? And why? It makes you question it. Why 10 years? Why 20? I mean, maybe they do need 10 or 20 years, but push yourself to explain why versus just having some generic number, because as you know, that's silly. So those are the two for developing the role description and professional profile. And then the final piece of collecting evidence, I call it grip. It's like, how are you going to get a grip on somebody? Because interviews should be fun for both sides. It should be a fun experience for everybody involved. And so that's what grip's about. Grip stands for games. So doing some sort of game. I mean, we all like to play games, whether that's like a riddle or an interesting question or a case study or whatever the case may be. But you get a feel for how somebody works naturally in this environment. Then I's for interview questions. R's for reputation. So more than just reference checks, but like reputation would be like their portfolio of work, other people they've worked with before, a high enough level role. I've even advised companies to do a private investigator if it's a high enough level role. It's funny who I got that Tony Robbins does that. So before Tony Robbins works with anyone, he hires a private investigator and he tells them is that you can do it for me too. But I mean, he's working in like these, at a certain level, the consequence of error of getting in the business with the wrong person for him could be a couple $100 million. So you think about, and so if you're Nike or you're Adidas and you're hiring a CEO or CIO or, there might be a level where that level of reputational due diligence you might want to do. And then you can obviously go backwards, but just doing reference checks is late. That's why I call it like reputation, right? Not just references. I is interview questions, which, have thoughtful ones, interesting ones, and ones that relate to the role and the professional profile. And then P is personal. Like, I'm blown away that people don't do like personal things more often. You're going to work with this person, whether that's going to dinner with your spouse and their spouse, going on a walk, doing a hard workout with somebody, going golfing with somebody. Like, you learn far more in those scenarios. I remember I was with a partner and I was asking him something. He goes, the best move I made in my life was I was golfing with, a boss of mine, my wife and his wife, and my wife caught him cheating. And I was like, it's just golf. Like, I don't really care. It's not that big of a deal. She's like, but if he cheats in golf, odds are he cheats in other avenues of his life. And he's like, and so I stopped working for him. And a couple years later, got fired, a big lawsuit, and she was spot on. So like, there's certain things in these different environments that are personal driven that are almost more important than some of the evidence you'll gather. And I call it collecting evidence, because like, we don't want to go into interviewing in a judgmental position. We'd much rather go in from a curious position. And so ideally, grip is like, you're just curious about the person. What type of person is going to be successful in this. And if you don't hire them, you don't have to feel bad being like, oh, I don't like you. It's like, no, I like you. I just don't think I'm going to put you in the best position to do this job because of X, Y, Z. But however, let's create a talent portfolio. Let's stay in touch. And then a year, 2 years down the line, maybe you reach out to them again, but you guys exit in a way that's thoughtful, professional, and human driven versus exiting in like this awkward way because you just didn't hire someone because you didn't have a good gut feel about them or the right feel, and I think that's when we go in with the judgmental. We're judging the resume, we're judging them, and then we're just looking for the narrative or the evidence to fill our narrative, where it's like, be curious, collect evidence in all these different avenues, and then compare it to the profile and the description you have. And are you taking a thoughtful chance? You and I, we've been in this domain long enough. No one's an expert in hiring. You cannot be. Like, it is not possible to be an expert in hiring because there's so many moving pieces. And you read it in the book, like Robin Hogarth has wicked environments and kind learning environments. Hiring is a wicked environment. Things can change, crazy, personal situations happen. I've had things like, I literally had this situation happen in my career. Guy got a job, perfect fit, all-star. Everyone was happy. A month later, his wife divorced him and his mom died in the same week. Obviously, everything changed. He showed up to work drunk, right? Of course. I mean, you can't forecast. Like, the best thing we can do is take a thoughtful chance on somebody. And that's what, Linda and the role-based hiring framework is supposed to do. It's supposed to make it really personal. It's supposed to give you creative constraints that are flexible. And it's supposed to allow you to take a thoughtful chance because that's the best you can do, right? I mean, no personality test, no data, like that's fairy tale world. But if you are authentic with how you develop the role, if you're honest about the profile, you're thoughtful in how you collect evidence, you cultivate a really good experience for the individual. Like I have hiring hospitality in there. Like you're a host them accordingly. Like you've been so thoughtful with the way you've hosted me on this podcast, how you prepared me before, how you sent me the invite. You made it easy for me, right? And you're very, you provided a comfortable environment. We should be doing the same, with hiring and the whole experience, whether it's virtual or it's in person, and there's a level of hosting and hospitality that I think is bare minimum. And so long-winded answer, I mean, I spent a long time, working on that. And that was, that's the mix of like psychology, anthropology, real world experience, tons of questions, my experience, and I feel like I'm really proud of that work. Like creating that framework was a very proud moment. And I hope more people experiment with it because I'm assuming there'll be some edits and some things that I could probably improve upon. But from my experience, and me working with it and with other clients, it's been pretty liberating. I think people find the joy and they see the extreme opportunity that hiring brings versus like a stressful, necessary evil.
Yeah, I think it'll just relieve a lot of angst that comes with hiring. And, we try to talk about like have fun hiring again. Like it's become such a burden and people are consistently looking for reasons why not to hire this person versus like taking that thoughtful chance and trying to find why don't I bring this person in the organization and what are their true talents. And I've been guilty of this. A lot of people that I've interacted with within my profession and the people that I serve is I can tell within 30 seconds if I want to hire this person or not. And you always have to trust your gut. Like I do believe that your gut is usually right, but when you put it into this book in such a thoughtful way to be able to host an amazing experience, you give somebody the opportunity to be able to let them full selves come out in this interview process by the way you define the role, by the way you took time to think about what questions you're going to ask, by the way you're going to host them. And so I do think a lot of people would benefit from reading it, especially after being a practitioner in this. There's things that I'm learning that I wish I would be doing better. And everybody could, right? Because hiring is such a small percentage of your job, but it leads to such outsized returns if you do it right. So where can people get the book? Where can they follow along your journey? And man, this conversation has been awesome. Really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, the book will be out. So I get the author. So I don't know when this is going to be posted. So I think, by the time this is posted, I'll send you the link. So you'll be able to get the link in your bio. The book will be live there. And then following me, my Instagram is probably going to be the best spot. And my brand is House of Jester. That's my handle for the company. And then me, I'm just at Alimondi, which is, just like seal, just real one word there.
Keep it simple.
And there, on my personal one, I think it'll just be more me showing kind of how I approach work. And maybe, some interesting experiments that I'm trying. And then House of Jester will be all about, mentality and how you can express yourself in your work and just cool things. Like my next book is called Misfits, and I'm profiling 50 misfits that turned into mavericks. Because I think my hypothesis is that every maverick is just a misfit on a mission. And so you go through this transition of like misfit, rebel, maverick. But you're not a rebel because you just want to be an ass, or you just like you're rebel with a purpose in a way, with the exception of the potato chip being created. So Ed Crumb created the potato chip, but he did it out of like spite, which is a really funny story. So now I'm just like, I'm finding all these people throughout history that like, for example, the word maverick, a real guy was named Samuel Maverick. And it stems from everybody was branding their cattle because they wanted to like know what cattle was theirs. And Samuel was like, I'm not branding my cattle. Like, I don't believe in doing that. And so he was a maverick because everyone else was branding cattle while he wasn't. And that's the term maverick came from, because he was the one who decided not to, it's just like it's
interesting.
So it's yeah. And so that's the kind of stuff that I hope to share on the House of Jester account, of just making people aware that work is an expression. It's a medium of expression, and to give them permission to challenge like the default ways of doing things, that like the opposite. And I got this from Rory Southern, like the opposite of a good idea can be a good idea. So the opposite way of someone doing something could be the right way. Like someone might be like, waking up at 5 a.m. will change your life. Well, it's like, maybe staying up till 3 a.m. will change your life too. Like maybe, it just depends on like who you are.
Such an insightful conversation. Such a great read. And yeah, I can't say thank you enough. So grateful you came on today, Cody, and thanks for the time.
Thank you, Bryan. It was great, man. Had a lot of fun and hope to do it again.
Yeah, we'll have to do it once that next one comes out. I'm impressed, man. I'm proud. Like, keep going. Keep these coming out. People need to hear what you've got to say. So yeah. Good work.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate it. And I look forward to reading yours. 2 years. I'm calling it now. 2 years, you'll have your first one published.
No, deal. I'll write that down.